Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The very first notifications for jury duty have gone out in what is arguably the most important criminal trial in the history of American democracy. NBC News reporter Jonathan Allen got his hands on what appears to be a form for prospective jurors in Donald Trump's federal election interference trial, which is set to begin March 4th of next year, just 3 months from now. The form asks potential jurors if they will be able to attend court 5 days a week for a period of approximately 3 months starting on that date. And it tells them to prepare for a more detailed series of questions starting in February. As the person who received the summons told NBC News, while the document does not refer to Trump by name, based on the dates and the length of the trial, quote, you can easily infer what it's regarding. Now, both sides in that trial are preparing with legal filings that give some indication of the cases they will present. Again, in this trial, it's going to happen in 3 months. According to one recent filing, Trump's lawyers are apparently going to try to confuse and hoodwink and misdirect the jury with all kinds of ludicrous and debunked conspiracy theories. They are seeking, for example, from the government, quote, all documents regarding Ray Epps or any similar persons who encouraged or participated in any illegal activities on January 6th. Now, if that name rings something of a bell, it's because Ray Epps is a January 6th insurrectionist who, according to various baseless right-wing conspiracy theories, was actually an undercover federal agent sent to the Capitol to incite the insurrection as a kind of trap. In fact, Fox News repeated that lie so often that Epps, who has since pleaded guilty to January 6 charges and was not a federal agent, is now suing the network for defamation for calling him that. Bizarrely, the Trump campaign is also seeking documents related to John Nichols. Yes, the longtime, well-known liberal journalist from The Nation, colleague and friend of mine for decades, who you may remember from his many appearances on this very show. And I have to admit, this one was news to even me, and I do cover this stuff for a living, and I read about it all day long, every day. You see, apparently, some January 6 conspiracy theorists believe that John Nichols, who was in Wisconsin on January 6th, not in D.C., appeared at the Capitol in order to trick Trump supporters into ransacking the place to make them look bad. They've got like a nickname for him and some video they think they've identified him on the scaffold. So that is the caliber of argument you can expect from the Trump legal team. False flag from John Nichols of The Nation. Bottom of the barrel conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, in a document made public today, prosecutors with special counsel Jack Smith's office said they want to make Trump's previous lies about election fraud part of their case. Quote, the defendant's false claims about the 2012 and 2016 elections are admissible because they demonstrate the defendant's common plan of falsely blaming fraud for election results he does not like, as well as his motive, intent, and plan to obstruct the certification of the 2020 election results and illegitimately retain power. Smith's prosecutors also write, quote, the government plans to introduce evidence at trial showing that in the year since the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the defendant has openly and proudly supported individuals who criminally participated in obstructing congressional certification that day, including by suggesting that he will pardon them if reelected, even as he has conceded that he had the ability to influence their actions during the attack. What's interesting here is that in many ways, Trump's planned legal arguments are kind of an affirmation of that last point from Jack Smith, right? They are indisputably part of a years-long campaign by Trump to defend and to excuse the violent and criminal insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, in this case by pinning the blame on somebody else. Now, this idea that January 6th was a false flag started popping up almost immediately after the attack, when people who were supporters of Trump had to figure out how to defend an indefensible set of actions that we all saw live on national television. The path of least resistance, ideologically speaking, was to blame the whole thing on the left, to say that it was really Antifa or, I guess, John Nichols. In fact, just days after the insurrection, Trump was already blaming left-wing protesters. In a phone call on January 11th, Trump reportedly said Antifa was really responsible for the attack, to which Kevin McCarthy, of all people, responded, quote, it's not Antifa, it's MAGA. I know, I was there. Again, this is all ludicrous. It's grimly comical, but it is part of an actual, real-life, authoritarian cult created to give a permission structure to its followers so they can engage in political violence. And it's not just Trump. The most powerful Republican in the country, the man who is second in line to the presidency as I speak to you tonight, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, made a shocking announcement today about the release of raw footage from inside the Capitol on January 6th.
House Republicans trust the American people to draw their own conclusions. They should not be dictated by some narrative and accept that as fact. So they can review the tapes themselves. We're going through a methodical process of releasing them as quickly as we can. As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems.
You get all that? A lot to unpack here. First, to be clear, when Johnson says Republicans trust the American people to draw their own conclusions and not just be spoon-fed a narrative about January 6th, he is quite explicitly feeding the conspiracy theories, right? The people that want this footage released by House Republicans want it released because they want to find the hidden federal agents. So the intended audience understands that message loud and clear. But even more unbelievable is the open admission in front of cameras, said out loud to the nation, that House Republicans, the senior House Republican, is actively running cover for criminal insurrectionists. People who, in full view of the public, with no expectation of privacy in the nation's capital, stormed said Capitol, in some cases assaulting police officers, and attempted a violent coup. But we can't show their faces because the fuzz might get them. What really gives away the game is then the subsequent half-hearted attempt to walk those comments back after significant public outcry. Johnson's spokesperson, Raj Shah, who coincidentally or not was previously a spokesperson of the Trump White House, tweeted, quote, "Faces are to be blurred from public viewing room footage to prevent all forms of retaliation against private citizens from any non-governmental actors." But just to be clear, that is not what the speaker actually said. Take a listen.
As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems.
And to be charged by the DOJ. Snitches get stitches. We can't have people finding and identifying insurrectionists. Those are our people. We don't want them arrested. We don't want them charged by the DOJ. We want them out, free, ready to do whatever they need to do again. All of this is in furtherance of the same objective, which is to protect and excuse the violent mob that attacked the Capitol. And that is now the official position from Mike Johnson's lips to your ears, the most powerful Republican in Washington and the Republican Party as a whole. The simultaneous, ludicrous belief that January 6th was a false flag, but also was good that it happened. The rioters need to be protected. Because as Liz Cheney, former vice chair of the January 6th committee, pointed out to Nicole Walls today, that helps to protect the man who encouraged them, goaded them to storm the Capitol in the first place.
I think this is a situation where you have the Republican Party actively trying to ensure that people actively trying to ensure to whitewash what happened on the 6th and to collaborate with the former president. I think that's a really important point because the threat that he poses wouldn't be so significant if people had done the right thing, had said, no, he's not, that's not who we are. But instead, there is obviously this embrace of him and this collaboration with the very damaging efforts he's undertaken.
We're coming up on 3 years since the insurrection. In that time, Trump and his enablers have made their positions about that day clear. The only question remaining is, will he be allowed to finish the job he started 3 years ago?